So today's gospel moment is brought to us from chapter 8, item 5 of the gospel explained by the Spiritist Doctrine. This passage is found in Matthew 5, 27 and 28, and it reads as follows. You have learned that it was said to the ancients, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that he who looks at a woman with a wicked desire for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, we know that Jesus often spoke in a manner that would grab the attention of the people of his era. So we can't take everything literally, all of the teachings that he bestowed upon us. We have to analyze it in a different way. And luckily, we've been given the key with Spiritism to open this treasure trove that we got from Jesus, so that we can study, further elucidate upon these teachings from the Christ. And here we have to think of adultery in another sense. Not in this literal sense, but in the sense of infidelity and unfaithfulness, but an unfaithfulness to the self. Because this is an example of an impure thought, an impure action. So to put this in a really crude example of our day-to-day lives, we can think of it this way. When we have a delicious cake, something delicious, dessert, whatever it may be, we eat a certain amount of this cake or this dessert, and we say, oh, I'm stuffed. This is delicious. But I could have that extra piece. I really want that extra piece. So this thought comes into your mind that you're really wanting, you have this desire, this urge to get this last piece of cake or whatever dessert it may be. And you're faced with a few options. You either try to overcome this urge, this tendency that you know will lead to a negative consequence, or you actually succumb to the thought and go and have the piece of cake. Now there's another option, which is you may think about eating that cake, but the cake isn't there. But if it was there, you would eat it, which is the same as actually eating that cake. You know the consequences are going to be negative. You're going to have indigestion, heartburn. You may have some kind of tummy ache after you eat all of that because you're so full. But that's what you decided to do. That was your choice, your free will. So here you're given an opportunity to limit yourself, to overcome that bad tendency, that inclination to eat that extra piece. And you could say, I could choose to actually eat that piece of cake, that extra piece of cake, or I could choose not to eat it because I know if I don't eat it, I'm not going to suffer those consequences that are going to be so damaging to my physical body. Well, if you take this example into the spiritual aspect, this is more or less how it works. Because when a person is purified, or we are a pure spirit, we are not even going to have an impure thought. Because we're already cleansed. We're, quote-unquote, perfect, so to speak, in a relative sense. But when we have an impure thought, that necessarily means that we are still imperfect. We have not purified ourselves. And we're given an opportunity to overcome these tendencies when we think of these things. When a thought comes into our mind of doing something that we know is going to lead to perhaps a negative consequence. So we can say, well, here's an opportunity for me to become better, to embrace the law of progress, and to evolve and overcome this bad tendency or inclination that I may have had from past existences and past behaviors that I have not yet cleansed myself of. Or you can choose to have the thought and engage upon that thought and materialize that thought, even though you know it's negative. So in this scenario, the progress has not even begun. We have not even started to cleanse our impurities. In the other scenario, we're already starting to cleanse. We're beginning this work of evolution of cleansing our impurities. And then we have, of course, the other scenario that I spoke of in the previous analogy, which is we think about it and we want to materialize that thought, but because we don't have the means or the tools to do it, we don't do it. And it's the same as committing the deed. We are just as guilty when we do this as when we commit the deed. So it is incumbent upon us to overcome this so that we can become purified, so we can better ourselves. And this is basically what this passage is all about. So what do we have to do to resolve this? When we have an impure thought and we're given this opportunity to advance it, to become better, we can simply sit back before we actually do the deed, because so many people are impulsive and they just go ahead and do something without thinking, because everything in the world originates from thoughts. Everything that we have materialized on earth came from a thought. The inventions, the things that we have in our lives, our relationships, everything originated from a thought. So we're given the opportunity not to actually engage in a negative thought, so we can have a positive consequence instead of a negative one. So what do? We can sit back, close our eyes before engaging in that thought, and say a prayer, and talk to God and say, "Dear Father, please inspire me to overcome this bad tendency, this inclination that I may have, this urge to do something negative, so that I may overcome it." And the moment you do this and open yourself up to receive the blessings of the Father, or any kind benevolent spirit that might be next to you, immediately that impure thought is going to go away, because you're connecting yourself with something greater. So this is a way for us to be able to overcome our imperfections. It's a tool that's been given to us. It is a blessing, because we're able to talk to the Father at any moment. It's a constant connection. It's not a collect call where you're going to be charged. It's free. And you can take all the time you want. You don't have to say everything quickly before the recording is over. I don't know if people remember this or not, but anyway, it's a bad joke. But, so that's basically what this passage means. It's when you have a bad thought, pray, ask for guidance, that immediately that bad thought is going to go away. And you're beginning the work of improving yourself that we need so bad. So that's that. That's what this summarizes basically, which is wonderful, because you see here Jesus talking about adultery, but we know that he was given us such a deeper lesson than just what we see here. And that applies to every single one of his teachings, which is why I always say it's so important to read the works of Kardec, the Gospel according to Spiritism, specifically for this purpose, because it allows us to dive deeper into these teachings and be overcome by this depth of this ocean of knowledge that Jesus left for us. But anyway, that was tonight's gospel moment.